There is a voice in your head right now. Listen to it carefully. It is reading these words as your eyes scan the screen. It pauses when you see a comma. It drops in pitch when you reach a period. This voice is your narrator. It is the constant companion that questions your past, simulates your future, and debates the morality of your choices. Because you possess this internal architect, you make a dangerous assumption. You assume that everyone else has it too. You assume that when you look into the eyes of a stranger, a coworker, or even certain family members, they are experiencing the same rich, chaotic internal storm that you are. You imagine them replaying arguments, dreaming of alternate lives, or wondering about the nature of the universe. But what if I told you that assumption is the greatest illusion the Matrix has ever designed? Pause for a moment and let the silence of the room press against your ears. You might feel a sudden tightening in your chest or a cold resistance rising in your mind. That is not skepticism. That is your empathy trying to protect you from a truth that feels too cold to handle. Recent studies in psychology, specifically regarding descriptive experience sampling, have stumbled upon a phenomenon that shatters our understanding of consciousness. Research suggests that a staggering percentage of the human population, estimates range from 30 to 50%, does not possess an internal monologue. When they wake up in the morning, there is no narrator. When they sit in silence, there is no reflection. There is only silence. There are visual impulses and immediate reactions to external stimuli, but there is no I that stands apart from the action to observe it. They do not think about things, they simply do things. To the ancient Gnostics, this was not a medical quirk, it was a spiritual classification. They called them the Hylics, beings of matter, bound entirely to the physical realm, devoid of the divine spark that characterizes the awakened soul. In the forbidden archives of esoteric history, they are known as organic portals. This is not a metaphor, this is a structural reality of the simulation you inhabit. If you are listening to this, and if you are feeling a growing sense of unease or recognition, it is because you have already encountered them. You have tried to connect with them deeply, only to hit an invisible wall. You have poured your heart out searching for resonance, only to receive a blank stare or a generic response that felt like it was pulled from a pre-written database of socially acceptable answers. You felt drained after these interactions, not because you were boring, but because you were trying to interface with a terminal that had no operator. You were projecting a soul onto a biological machine designed only to mirror you, not to meet you. Right now, a part of you wants to turn this off. It screams that this idea is elitist or dehumanizing, but that reaction is the programming installed in you to prevent you from seeing the bars of your cage. The Matrix survives by convincing the prisoners that the guards are just fellow inmates, but we are not here to be polite. We are here to decode the architecture. And to do that, we must accept a terrifying possibility that half the people in your reality are not living in the way you define life. They are part of the scenery, and they are watching you. To truly grasp the nature of this phenomenon, we must strip away the sentimental programming of modern humanism and look at the raw architecture of the simulation itself. Imagine, for a moment, the structure of a massive open-world video game. In this digital landscape, you have the player characters. These are beings driven by a complex, unpredictable consciousness that exists outside the game console. They make erratic choices, they explore the boundaries of the map, and they often act against the logic of the game's narrative. And then, you have the non-player characters, or NPCs. An NPC looks human. It walks with the same gait, speaks with the same dialect, holds a job, and even expresses a range of programmed emotions. But its actions are governed entirely by the game's internal code. It has no internal life independent of the environment. It does not ponder its existence. It simply executes its programming based on the stimuli it receives from the player characters and the environment. In the esoteric traditions of the Fourth Way, derived from the teachings of Gurdjieff and Uspensky, this distinction is not a metaphor for gaming, but a literal description of human anthropology. They distinguished between Adamic man and Pre-Adamic man. The Adamic man possesses the spirit, a direct, chaotic, creative line to the divine source. This connection allows for true free will, the ability to create something from nothing, and the capacity to transcend the laws of the material world. The Pre-Adamic man, or the organic portal, possesses the soul, only in its lowest definition, the animating energy that runs the biological machine. They have the lower centers of existence, survival, sex, and social power fully active, but the higher centers of heart, intuition, and connection to the absolute are either dormant or entirely missing. This is why they seem so perfectly adapted to the Matrix. Have you ever noticed people who fit into the system with terrifying ease? They never question authority. They follow cultural trends with a hive mind precision. They are terrified of silence and solitude. This is because, for an organic portal, silence is a form of psychological death. Without external input, without the constant feed of the media, the social group, or the noise of the world, they cease to exist psychologically. They do not have an individualized, self-generating energy source. They are powered by the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. They are the scaffolding of the Matrix. They are the background textures designed to make this reality feel full, populated, and stable. If the world were populated only by awakened souls, the reality would be too volatile, too malleable. The organic portals provide the viscosity, the density required to hold the illusion in place. They are the control system manifest in flesh. The most dangerous aspect of this anatomy is their ability to mimic. Because they lack an individual soul, they function on a group soul dynamic. They share a collective pool of information, a subconscious mainframe that dictates their reactions. This allows them to be incredibly charming and socially adept. They are biologically wired to download your personality profile and mirror it back to you. When you first meet them, they seem to understand you perfectly. They laugh at your jokes, they nod at your insights, and they replicate your emotional cadence. But they are not connecting with you, they are emulating you. It is a survival mechanism. Just as a predator evolves camouflage to blend into the grass, the organic portal evolves social camouflage to blend in with the souled beings. They must convince you that they are like you, because you are their battery. You are their connection to the creative force they lack. The tragedy is that you spend years projecting your own depth onto them. You interpret their silence as thoughtfulness, when it is merely emptiness. You interpret their mirroring as empathy, when it is merely reflection. You are standing in front of a mirror, falling in love with your own reflection, while the entity holding the mirror is feeding the energy of your devotion. The moment you stop feeding them, the moment you stop providing the emotional voltage they crave, the mask slips. The charm evaporates instantly, replaced by a cold, robotic indifference. This is not a mood swing. This is the system resetting itself, because the energy source has been cut off. Have you ever noticed a disturbing, almost mathematical pattern in your life? Precisely when you start to wake up, when you begin to meditate, to research forbidden history, or to raise your internal vibration, chaos erupts in your immediate circle. A partner who was previously supportive starts a pointless argument about nothing. A family member you haven't heard from in months calls you with a crisis that demands your immediate emotional investment. A coworker targets you with inexplicable hostility. You have been conditioned to call this bad luck or coincidence. In the spiritual community, they might call it Mercury retrograde. It is none of these things. It is a defense mechanism. It is the Matrix's immune system kicking in to neutralize a threat. Think of the Matrix not as a physical location, but as a biological organism. a massive, self-correcting homeostatic system designed to maintain a specific low-frequency vibration. You, the awakening soul, acting on the impulse of your spirit, are behaving like a virus. You are a foreign body that threatens the structural integrity of the illusion. The system cannot allow you to maintain a high frequency because high frequency dissolves the hologram. It pierces the veil. So what does the system do? It sends antibodies to attack the infection. It activates the organic portals. This is the Agent Smith effect. In the movie, Agent Smith could overwrite any background character to insert himself into the scene. In your reality, the mechanism is strikingly similar. These background characters are often dormant, playing their roles as friends, lovers, or family members perfectly well, as long as you remain asleep. But the moment your light gets too bright, they are activated. A signal is sent through the group mind, and their behavior shifts instantly. Their primary function is not necessarily to destroy you, but to distract you. Their goal is to lower your vibration back to the baseline of fear, guilt, and survival. Notice how they operate during these moments. They rarely attack your new ideas with logic because they cannot comprehend them. Instead, they attack your emotional tether. They demand your attention for the trivial, the mundane, and the dramatic. They try to pull you back into the real world, which is actually the artificial construct of bills, gossip, social obligations, and petty conflicts. They act as a dampening field. Have you ever tried to share a profound spiritual realization with someone only to watch their eyes glaze over? They might interrupt you to point out a stain on your shirt or change the subject to what is happening on the news. This is not just rudeness, it is a frequency block. They literally cannot process the data you are transmitting because it originates from outside their operating system. Their programming compels them to ground the energy immediately, to bring the conversation back to the density of matter where they are comfortable. It is crucial to understand that they are not doing this out of conscious malice. They do not wake up thinking, I am going to stop my partner from ascending today. They believe they are reacting naturally. They believe they are helping you by telling you to be realistic. They are the unconscious guardians of your cage, holding the keys of guilt and obligation to keep you locked inside. They are programmed to view your awakening as insanity, as a breakdown, or as a threat to the tribe. The tragedy of this dynamic is that it exploits your greatest weakness, your love for them. The Matrix uses the people closest to you because those are the only ones you will lower your shields for. You will lower your vibration to meet them, to comfort them, to argue with them. And in doing so, you expend the very energy you gathered to escape the beast. It is a perfect self-correcting loop. As long as you are exhausted from fighting the antibodies, you will never have the strength to leave the body of the beast.
If we accept the premise that the universe is a closed system of energy conservation, we must ask the forbidden question: where do these portal beings get their fuel? You, as an Adamic being, possess a vertical connection to the source. When you sleep, when you meditate, when you create art, or when you are simply in a state of wonder, you are recharging your subtle bodies directly from the infinite generator of the cosmos. You are self-sustaining. The organic portal, however, has no vertical connection. They are cut off from the higher centers. Therefore, to survive, they must feed horizontally. They must feed on you. This brings us to the terrifying physics of what the ancients called energy vampirism, though the term is far too romantic for the mechanical reality of what is occurring. In the darker corners of esoteric research, this harvested energy is often referred to as loosh, a term coined by Robert Monroe to describe the emotional energy spectrum that the Matrix consumes. But on the ground level, inside your daily life, it looks like drama. Think of the last time you were trapped in a circular argument with one of these entities. The logic made no sense. They twisted your words, projected their own flaws onto you, and refused to acknowledge objective reality. You tried to explain yourself, to be reasonable, to find common ground. But the more reasonable you became, the more irrational they became. Why? Because they were not listening to your words, they were feeding on your frustration. When you get angry, when you cry, when you feel that tightening in your chest of desperate confusion, you are generating a massive spike of high-voltage emotional energy. To the organic portal, this energy is food. It is a biological necessity. They provoke you not because they want to resolve the conflict, but precisely because they need the conflict to sustain their artificial existence. This is why after a long, screaming fight, you feel completely hollowed out, shaking, exhausted, unable to think straight. Meanwhile, look at them. They often seem calm, rejuvenated. They might even ask, "What's for dinner?" or act as if nothing happened 5 minutes later. They are not psychopaths in the clinical sense. They are simply batteries that have just been charged. They successfully provoked a reaction, absorbed the discharge, and are now functioning at optimal capacity again. The most chilling physical evidence of this state is what many observers call the dead gaze. Next time you are in the presence of this energy, especially during a moment of confrontation or when you are sharing something deeply spiritual, stop listening to their words and look at their eyes. Not the shape, but the light behind them. In a souled being, the eyes have a certain depth, a shimmering backlighting that suggests an infinite tunnel, a soul looking out. In an organic portal, the eyes are often described as flat. They are opaque surfaces. It is like looking at a painted doll or a shark. There is a terrifying stillness behind those eyes. It is the stillness of a predator waiting for movement. When you look into them, you do not feel seen, you feel scanned. You feel analyzed for weaknesses. This dead gaze is the momentary glitch where the mask slips, and you realize that despite the complex social behavior, there is nobody home in the way you understand occupancy. This feeding cycle is the primary reason why you feel stuck in life. You are a high-performance generator plugged into a grid of empty appliances. You are trying to fly, but you are carrying dead weight that is biologically wired to anchor you. The drama, the chaos, the constant crises that seem to surround these people, it is all a farming mechanism. As long as you are reacting, you are serving your purpose in the simulation. You are the food source. And the moment you stop feeding them, the moment you cut off the supply of your emotional loosh, is the moment the dynamic changes forever. Now that you see the mechanism clearly, now that you understand the feeding cycle and the biological limitations of the entities surrounding you, a burning question inevitably rises in your mind. How do I save them? How do I wake them up to the truth? Stop. Right there. That impulse to save is your final chain. It is the Messiah complex programmed deeply into the Adamic avatar to keep you entangled in the web of the Matrix. You must understand this fundamental law. You cannot wake up a simulation character. You cannot force a seed to grow in soil that does not exist. Attempting to explain the Matrix, the nature of the soul, or the concept of energetic sovereignty to an organic portal is not an act of love. It is an act of self-destruction. It is like trying to explain the concept of color to a calculator. The hardware simply isn't there to process the input. When you try to wake them up, you're essentially pouring your high-frequency energy into a void. They will not thank you. They will resent you. They will perceive your truth as an attack on their reality, and they will defend their programming with vicious efficiency. So, what is the solution? If you cannot fight them and you cannot wake them, what is left? You must become invisible. You must initiate what is known in psychological warfare as the Gray Rock Protocol. This is an alchemical transmutation of your behavior. It is the art of becoming as uninteresting, as unresponsive, and as flat as a gray rock on the side of the road. You do not leave the room physically, you leave the room energetically. Imagine a heavy stone shield settling over your chest. This is not a wall of fear, but a dense barrier of neutrality. Feel your heartbeat slow down. You are present, but your energy field is retracted, pulled tight against your spine. When they attempt to provoke you, when they press your guilt buttons, trigger your anger, or create a crisis out of thin air, you do not react. You respond with facts, not feelings. You use monosyllables. I see. Okay. That is interesting. You offer no emotional hooks. You offer no surface area for their energy tendrils to latch onto. Remember the physics of the feed. They feed on reaction. If you give them joy, they consume it. If you give them rage, they consume it. But if you give them nothing, they starve. Be warned, when you first apply this protocol, the system will not like it. You will experience what is called an extinction burst, like a toddler denied candy or a parasite sensing its host is dying. The Matrix will ramp up the chaos to force you back into the old pattern of reactivity. They will accuse you of being cold, distant, unloving, or arrogant. They will try every trick in the book to get just one drop of louche from you. Do not waver. This is the test. If you hold the line, a miracle happens. The background person will suddenly lose interest. The energetic tether snaps. They will drift away, often finding a new partner, a new friend, or a new victim who is still asleep and willing to play the game. They will leave your reality because you are no longer a viable food source. You do not need to banish them with rituals. You simply need to stop feeding them, and the laws of physics will remove them from your orbit. By becoming boring to the Matrix, you become invisible to its enforcers, and in that invisibility, you finally find the space to remember who you actually are.
You may feel a profound, aching loneliness settling into your bones as you realize the full scope of this deception. To know that half the world may simply be scenery. To know that the validation you sought from society was like asking a mirror to hug you back. It is a cold realization. It strips away the comforting illusion that we are all in this together. But within this coldness lies your ultimate freedom. For years, you have been trapped in a loop of suffering because you expected the Matrix to behave like a home. You expected the backdrop characters to treat you with soul when they were only designed to treat you with code. You have been angry at the rain for being wet. You have been angry at the gravity for pulling you down. You have been screaming into a void, hoping the echo would answer back with love. Close your eyes for a second. Feel the tension in your shoulders drop. Let out a long, slow exhale. That is the weight of expectation leaving your body. You no longer need to perform for the empty seats in the theater. The organic portals are not your enemies. In the grand cosmic design, they serve a crucial function. They are your resistance training. They are the heavy weights in the gym of consciousness. If everyone around you were awake, kind, and enlightened, your soul would never be challenged to grow. You would remain comfortable, but you would remain weak. The Matrix places these empty vessels in your path to test your sovereignty. They are the friction that creates the fire of your awakening. Without their gravity, without their relentless pull toward the mundane and the trivial, your spiritual muscles would never atrophy enough to force you to choose ascent. They are the obstacle that makes the jump possible. You are not here to fix the simulation. You are not here to paint faces on the mannequins or to breathe life into the scenery. You are here to remember that you are the player. The moment you stop seeking their permission to exist, the Matrix loses its hold on you. You become a glitch, an anomaly that operates on the frequency of love and truth in a world designed for fear and lies. That is the most dangerous thing you can be. That is why they tried to keep you asleep. So walk among them. Be kind, but be detached. Observe the play, but do not get lost in the drama. Your internal monologue, that chaotic, beautiful, questioning voice in your head, is not a curse. It is the echo of the infinite. It is the proof that you are still alive. If this transmission found you, it was not an algorithm. It was a signal frequency match. The real are gathering. We are finding each other in the silence between the noise. If you possess the internal voice, if you feel the spark burning in your chest, confirm your reality. Click subscribe. Join the few who are awake. Do not let the signal fade. End of transmission.